Good evening. Welcome to the Bennington Select Board meeting. It's Monday, August 10th. We're convening at the Bennington Fire Facility. At this point, it's about 6 o'clock. It's due time. And I would, at this point, introduce my fellow board members. Donald Campbell to my far left, Michael Keane to my left.
Hiya.
Jim Carroll, he's quiet in his introduction. Justin Corcoran, Sharon
First for
Rush,
everything.
Stuart Hurd, our town manager, and thankfully Nancy Lively is sitting in for Linda Bermudez. I hope she's having a good getaway. Nancy, I'm sure, will call back on history to keep the minutes as clear, concise as they always are. So without further ado, if we could all stand and pledge allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic. It's my distinct pleasure to introduce to the board and to the community, for those that have not already met her, I think I'll ask that Jim Culkeen do the formal introduction of the new Mount Anthony principal, Glenda Cresto. And if Jim and Glenda would join us at the table, anywhere is convenient.
Good evening, and thank you for inviting us. It's my pleasure to introduce the new principal of Mount Anthony High School, Glenda Cresto. Glenda recently came to us from Richford, Vermont, way up on the border, and where she was a vice principal for 4 years, and before that she's had administrative experience in Massachusetts, but I'm going to let her give a little bio to you. So without any further ado from me, Glenda Cresto.
Thanks very much.
Good evening. It's nice to meet everybody.
Welcome.
Thank you. I appreciate the welcome, and I appreciate the opportunity
It won't be the last time you'll
to meet with you. I hope not. I would look forward to being here a lot, actually. So do you want me just to launch in, or do you have questions? How do you want to?
Whatever is convenient. It's basically a conversation, but we're thrilled maybe just to hear a bit about your background and how you ended up in beautiful downtown Bennington, watching over the elite at the senior high school. And what is, maybe you can share with us some of your plans, thoughts, and expectations of your administration.
Okay. So I've been in education for about 33 years at this point. Started out as a teacher, taught in community colleges, in K through 8 after-school programs, and finally in a large regional high school in Massachusetts, where I developed a theater program from ground zero, both extracurricular and curricular activities in theater, taught health, English, cultural anthropology, introduction to early childhood education, and public speaking. And had in all of those areas throughout my life various experience which the superintendent in that district picked up and had me develop classes that addressed all of them. And that experience kind of gave me a unique look at a school, because I was working in more than one department and was not insular and was administrating a full theater program. And so I began to get really interested in what makes schools run, and really kind of wanted to think about what kept good teachers teaching. I noticed that from the year I started in this high school to about year 4 or 5 in, that most of my colleagues had left teaching and moved on to other fields, and I really began to wonder why. And so I had an opportunity to go back to graduate school and work with some leaders in the field at that time on attracting and retaining new teachers, and took that opportunity and took a leave of absence. Completed graduate studies, actually got 2 master's degrees, one in teacher leadership and one in principal licensure. And then wound up working in various capacities, recruiting and supervising and nurturing new teachers, for the Boston Teacher Residency Program, for the Harvard Graduate School of Education and really began to develop my expertise in supervision of teachers that way. Took a principalship in Amherst, Massachusetts, did some consulting, and came around to working in Richford, Vermont, because a visionary school leader was looking for an English teacher. And having done some administrative work for 5 or 6 years at that point, I was kind of aching to get back into the classroom. And I knew of this man through his work in Boston and took the opportunity to work with him in Richford, and started as an English teacher and then moved into a vice principalship, which in practice was much more like a co-principalship. Developed a new teacher induction program for the SU there. Did things like instructional rounds and worked with teacher teaming, and just in general began to look at proficiency-based learning while I was in Richford. And when he decided to move on, I decided to take on a principalship again and applied to Bennington, and was just really intrigued by being in an environment where I could really work with students on dreaming and dreaming big for their futures, in an environment where there were 3 colleges and businesses where people could intern and things like that. In Richford, it had been exactly the opposite. We were very isolated, more than an hour from the closest college campus. Many of our students did not have cars. Our opportunities to give students internships in businesses were extremely limited. And for me, Bennington kind of brought together my 2 passions, is making sure that students have the skills and the expertise to open any door that they want to open when they leave high school, and the opportunity to gain some real experience while they're there. And Bennington really brought those 2 things together for me. So I was thrilled when I was offered the position. So that's it in a nutshell. You have questions?
You've traveled a long way.
There you go, 33 years and, I don't know, 10 minutes maybe?
You'll often hear the sort of the mantra for this select board is economic development. You'll hear, see, and I shouldn't say ad nauseum, because that is why we're charged to sit here. And the most critical component of that economic totem pole is the workforce.
That's right.
And absent a qualified, solid workforce in this community, we can do a lot of talking and hoping, but the expectation will never be realized.
That's
so
right.
I think in your position, along with Jim's and the CDC, we're an alliance that we're drawn together probably closer than we ever have been.
Exactly.
And I know this board feels that the education, workforce development is going to be the underpinnings of that totem pole.
Yeah.
And I'm sure my colleagues have other additional thoughts. Donald, would you like to comment on?
Thank you.
Welcome. How's that?
Thank you.
Give you a double. I'm really pleased that you wanted to take this position, and pleased that you came to our community. I'm interested a little bit in when you went back to school, you were motivated by the attrition in the teachers. You mentioned that a lot of them were just staying for 4 or 5 years. Did you take away from that pearls of wisdom that you would bring to this community? I still see a lot of attrition in teachers, and
Yeah,
I
I
wonder
think
what you have to bring on that front.
I did take some pearls of wisdom in that regard, and I think what we know is a good teacher makes all the difference. And I think one of the things that I know drove my colleagues in Massachusetts to seek other careers, and I think is still operative today, is teachers come in on day 1 and they leave on day whenever it is, having the same job, having no opportunities to become teacher leaders, become, anything short of leaving the classroom and heading toward administration. And one of the things that I think research has indicated is that we know that that kind of flat career line is not healthy, and so teachers need opportunities to do more without leaving the classroom and heading into administration, because that really isn't where everybody's heart is. And that was another really attractive thing about Mount Anthony, because there are multiple opportunities there for teachers to take on responsibilities and still teach. So the development of Freshman Academy, for example, was developed by a teacher teaching. We have, the senior project was developed by a teacher teaching. There's department head positions that people can move in for short or longer periods of time, and there's various and sundry pieces teachers can do. And so I'm very excited about, continuing to look into that and expanding more. And I think we're headed into a time in education where that's going to become more and more critical, particularly as we attempt to make more and more meaningful links with businesses and communities and giving kids experience beyond the walls of our high schools. We need teachers to develop those programs and follow up and, do things like that. Yeah, and so I think that will keep, some people in. And I think for some people, it's a shorter term career. They're not envisioning it forever. And I think therefore then the work becomes making absolutely certain that students are getting the very best instruction that they can, because it's critical. I mean, every research indicator goes there that one great teacher can make a huge difference. So that's the goal.
That's great. Thank you.
Long-term, short-term, the best we can do.
Yeah, hi, and again, welcome, Ms. Cresto. When you're hiring young teachers, pretty much straight out of college or with a year or so experience, what is it that attracts you? What is it that makes you say, I want to hire that person? What do you look for?
I look for passion. I look for deep content knowledge. And I look for a love of students. And I know that sounds kind of touchy-feely, but without that, all the great classroom management skills in the world don't help. And then I think we hire them, they come in, they are mentored, and we develop an induction program that gives them the support they need to continue to build the skills that they started building in schools. But I think those are the three critical: passion, love of kids, and deep content knowledge.
Thank you.
Thank you. Kim?
Welcome to Bennington.
Thank you.
On a yearly basis, as you continue as a principal here, you'll come to us at budget time and we'll talk about the amount of taxes. I believe it's 2/3 of the taxes that we collect go towards education. And a continuing question in my mind that I asked at the last time, and I think deserves more emphasis, is not where or how we spend the money, but what the results are.
Right.
What kind of success and what measurements are we taking for our students who graduate? I believe it's a fair assessment that a third go on to college, a third go on to successful employment, and a third sort of languish. So I guess what I'm asking of you, or suggesting, or both, is that greater emphasis is put on not what or how, but what we get in return for it, for all those taxes, and how we measure the success of our students. And make that a part of your job and the school board to measure that in a meaningful way, so that at budget time, when the question comes up, what is the level of success for all three of those thirds?
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, I think that that's something that we really have to put some brain power into developing a research protocol to do. One of the things we're doing right now at the high school is contacting the students who graduated a year ago, and we're asking them 5 questions. And from this survey, what I want to do is look at the results from it and then really work with some quantitative people and figure out how we can do this in a more quantitative way. Because clearly what we're doing right now is just asking 5 questions and taking some qualitative work. But one of the questions we're asking is, in what ways did you feel prepared for whatever path you're on? So whether it's college or the workforce, in what ways when you walked into that first day or that first year did you feel like, okay, I got this? And specifically, where did you have that experience in the high school? And in what ways did you feel a little bit in over your head? And and what do you think maybe we missed, or what maybe did you miss during your high school career to kind of maybe give you that jump start. And so once I have the results of that survey, we'll look at that and figure out where to go deeper. But I think what we want to see in the kids who start college, what is even more important than, well, not more important, but equally important to starting well, is do they finish? Because the national research for people who actually complete college in 4 to 5 years is pretty low. And I think we want to look at our students for do they finish, and then what happens to them. So do we give them the power to make it all the way through a program? And I think we want to look at the same thing within the workforce. You know, where do they go from that first job? You know, how long do they stay in that first job? Things like that. And I think for the kids that we kind of don't know about, I think it's reaching out and really figuring out what's up. And I don't know what the answer is to that yet.
One other thing that I'd just like to mention with you, and we talked about it several years ago with respect to economic development, which is, our chairman said, it's a refrain that we hear all the time. And that is a closer association with our local employers and making sure that our students who graduate are not just getting a degree from their local high school, but maybe competently and well qualified to fill the jobs.
Exactly.
With our local employers.
Yeah. And so it's reaching out that way as well and looking at what their experience has been over time.
And do you have any?
And what we need to beef up to do that. And I would do probably the same thing, starting out with some kind of a qualitative survey that we would just get out to people and then do maybe some focus group work and just see where we go from there. Because I think the end stage of all of this is really looking at what we're offering at Mount Anthony. And are we targeting the right things? Are we doing enough? And do we need to begin to offer more? And I mean, I talked to a student today who graduated from Mount Anthony 3 years ago. He just happened to come in with his mom, and he and I talked for a bit. And just a 5-minute conversation with him highlighted the fact that he didn't feel that he'd done substantial enough writing, and that the biggest challenge in his freshman year, and he went to not an Ivy college, but kind of an upper tier college, his biggest challenge was doing the writing assignments and time management. And so I think those are things that we can really begin to look at.
Well,
what they leave here with, and maybe we develop projects that link students with businesses, and at the same time they're working on a senior project for us, and those two things are fused, and it's, I think we've got some ideas, we just need to know where to put it. And I think that's what taxpayers should be concerned about too, is how we address what we find.
Well, I think that you'll find that, if I may be so bold, that a qualitative analysis may be not necessary because there is a dearth of information that has been collected over the last several years, and perhaps consulting that may be of help to you. And furthermore, just maybe picking up the phone with local employers and just saying, come down and let's chat.
So do you guys have that information?
Oh, yes.
Okay.
Yes.
So I would love to have it.
I'm sure Mike Harrington can share that with you and the resource.
Yeah, I would love to have that.
Good. Go ahead, Justin.
Glenda, thanks for coming in this evening. It's
Absolutely.
a pleasure to meet you, and I know we all look forward to working with you in the future. Before I got involved in municipal government here, I spent a number of years on the board of the Career Development Center. I got pretty intimate with the organization and learned about a lot of the great things that are done over there. How important to you is the relationship between the two schools, and how important is an organization like that to a high school age student population in Bennington?
I think it's hugely important. I mean, I think it feels to me, and granted it's the summertime and so things aren't up and running, but it feels to me like one school. I know that our master schedule is built to empower students to take CDC courses, and I think we really have to be in the business of taking each student as an individual and figuring out how best to meet their academic needs, their dreams, and their career goals. And I don't think a high school can operate effectively without a strong connection to a tech school these days. I really don't. And the CDC offers an incredible range of courses including pre-law, including, everything from auto mechanics to pre-law. It's a huge range of courses that, I think if students are interested, we need to make it possible for them to make that part of their education and go as far as they can.
Excellent, thank you.
Thank you, Jessica. Sharon, sorry to be last.
Just, hanging out over here on the end. Thank you for coming, and it's a pleasure to meet you. I don't have any specific question, but it sure sounds like you've got a lot of energy and a lot of positive energy that you're going to bring to the school, and I really look forward to working with you as a select board member and as a citizen to bring all your nice ideas to fruition.
Yes, I'm very excited about the work, and the same with you guys. I hope we can develop a very close working relationship.
Please know
We
that
look
you have
forward
a
to it.
direct line. It's not dotted, it's not certain. You don't have to go around. We love to hear from you as you feel comfortable, and we will certainly, through Jim's office and otherwise, make sure that this is more than just a meet and greet, that we'll have a long relationship that benefits you and the entire community. Again, thank you for,
I look forward to it.
and thanks, Jim, for making it possible.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
It was nice meeting all of you.
Come back and see us.
Thank you.
Before I get to the consent agenda, I have to note that on the agenda, beyond the consent section, there was a discussion scheduled for the Oral Health Commission discussion. Due to an inability to get the material that the subcommittee had worked on to all of the members, we really can't have a discussion tonight. We really have to defer that till the 24th for that initial discussion, so that the entire select board can have the benefit of the initial draft, and so the community can also get that in advance of the discussion. So I apologize for those that made the effort to appear tonight. We're trying to do a good job, and we did a pretty good job on the committee side of things until it came time to distribute what we've been working on for the discussion. And I apologize, but we'll put it early on the agenda for the 24th, and you have my mea culpas if you would accept it. Thank you. We do have a consent agenda, and as is the course of action, are there any questions relative to the minutes or the warrants that have been circulated? Or if I do not hear any, I'll accept a motion for acceptance of the minutes and the warrants.
I move that they be accepted as presented, both the minutes and the warrants.
I'll second that.
Is there any more discussion on any of those? Hearing none, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye. And we have a
One abstention.
1 abstention, 5, 1 abstention, and 1 absent. Now is our process to hear from citizens. We have reserved 15 minutes for any thoughts, concerns of items that are not on the agenda to be shared with us for our future thought, consideration, or otherwise. If someone would like to take a first run at it, I'd be happy to recognize them. Please. And as our policy, if you could just indicate your name, your address, and the purpose of the comments.
Good evening. I'm speaking as Sam Rustino this evening.
Thank you, Sam.
I have a few things. We're starting to get real good events coming into Bennington, per se. The one that happened the beginning of the month on County Street out on the west end. But we need to have better events. What I'm hitting at is when you have events, it's like planning stages. And I know it's hard to plan, but if you're going to have certain events, they need to connect the dots. I couldn't help not think that a stone's throw from where County Street which was the Brewfest, downtown was crying. Walking distance on School Street. There should have been something going on to embrace downtown. A lot of the folks that attended that event didn't even look at our downtown. And I'm not even sure with that shuttle bus, if it took place, or was it feasible to have a shuttle bus from County Street to the craft show. And I know people are event planning they're protective of their domain, but I think they really need to work together. In other words, perpetuate each other. The craft show should have perpetuated the Brewfest. The Brewfest should have perpetuated the craft show. Because a lot of people don't read on Facebook. They don't read the newspapers. They have no idea when people come into this town, tourists, what's going on. They just happen to see a crowd, looked over, stopped, and embraced it. So we all look for shortcuts. What actually in virtual reality is we go back to the main roads. So I strongly ask that when we do events, that we try to focus on supporting each of the events that are taking place and not give a push-pull atmosphere. I know it tends to happen, but we should perpetuate into embracing other people's events and supporting each other. That's one concern. Also, instead of looking, we should look closer to our borders. The fishes are out there in Massachusetts and Connecticut. We've got developers that are looking into the Dover area. That's a pipeline that we need to have developers look over into Bennington, in our town, see if they would like to develop. That's one concern. Second concern is back in June on the 27th, there was a discussion on the feasibility study on our local high school, the junior high, the old junior high, Benno. Any updates on that? On any information on answers? Anybody want to comment?
I don't have anything to comment other than the contract's been signed, the work has started, and I think it's on time, and we'll be hearing back probably end of September, 1st of October.
Okay.
That's basically it. I haven't heard anything more than that. Sam?
This is the second reading for the town plan, correct? We're going to be having a discussion on what Justin brought up as
Yeah,
far as...
that's an agenda item, so we're going to
Okay,
reserve that.
I'll wait on that.
Yeah.
My fourth item is on Public Service Board 8454, which is Apple Hill on Willow Road. That's 27 acres of solar array that's proposed there. Does this select board have any information that they want to share to the town of Bennington if this is going through, or any thoughts? Or, I mean, they're going to be clear cutting 27 acres up in that area and putting a solar array. In my opinion, we don't even see any benefit from that. It goes onto the grid. I don't think we see all that much of power savings. It goes out into the grid. Do we get anything out of it? I really don't believe so. Anybody know about the Public Service Board 8454?
No, we don't. That's pending, I think, before the Public Service Board.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Steve.
Mr. Craig Bennington, is there any more information about any...
Chris, could you just get a little closer to the mic? I think.
Oh, sorry.
Yeah, no
Is
problem.
there any more information about activities on the Barney Road property that the town owns?
Nope, I don't believe there's been any further activity. If it is, it's going to be reported out in public session when and if we ever get to deal with it.
Yeah, I think we can probably say with some certainty that the solar array there is not going forward, principally because of changes in the law on siting requirements. So we understand the state is still interested in the truck chain lot, and there may be some other interest in the site. So nothing at this time, though, Chris.
Would the board be interested in giving some time to hear an idea that I have that may be a way for the town to work with the state to develop that land into something that could be used for something that the land was actually given to the town for? Mm-hmm. Maybe a park at some time? Should I get on an agenda item?
Yeah, I think that's a really good idea. I think that's part of the discussion that we're going to have before we do anything relative to moving that property forward. Because right now it sounds like the solar project is not going to happen. And so let's use that asset for the best use it can be put to. And there are a lot of anecdotal things around town which may or may not be appropriate, but I think we've got to have a public discussion about the benefits of using that for public benefit.
Should I get a hold of you to set up a agenda item?
Yeah, probably if you could do it through Dan,
Okay.
that'd be great.
And one other thing, I heard some mention that there might be sidewalks on Barney Road at some time. Has anybody heard anything about that?
No, I haven't known that.
Okay.
Not at this time. Thanks, Chris.
Thank you.
Okay. Anyone else like to comment on matters that are not on the agenda, intentionally or not? Hearing none, I appreciate the citizens' comments and always look forward to it because that's really an important part of the discussion because it sometimes sets the parameters and the foundation for future agenda discussion. And so if anyone in the community feels that they might have an idea or a thought or a suggestion that's not presently on the agenda, feel free to share it within that 15-minute time period because I know this chair and this board is interested in hearing. The next item on the agenda is the hearing, and it's called Second Public Hearing for the 215 Town Plan. What I would like to do, because that may take a little bit more time, is do some of this more administrative activity and basically the planning grant application for the Bennington Trail map. Could you, Dan, give us some highlights on that so we can then get back on track for the town plan discussion?
With regard to the planning grant application, I'm here tonight just to talk about the possibility of applying for the planning grant. This is the first of 2 times it will come before you. I sent you a draft scope of work regarding that possible planning grant application, and it would include an application to develop an inventory, first inventory, and then develop a map for the trails in Bennington. It would be a web-based map as well as a print version. Our idea is to work with a local organization, the Bennington Area Trail System folks, who were just recently organized. Donald Campbell's helped them with that and has been involved with that. And we think it's a really good way to put together and build awareness of the assets that we have and also to spur improvement of those assets. The specifics of the grant are that we would apply for $16,000 from the state through the municipal planning grant, and the match of $4,000 would be funded by the Bennington County Regional Commission. So there would be no municipal taxpayer funds in this grant if it were awarded. Like I said, I'm just here tonight to introduce the idea. I'll be back when we have a full-fledged scope of work that everyone agrees makes sense, but the draft scope of work I think is a good outline. It gives you a good idea of the type of things that we'd have to be doing. One of the important parts of that scope of work is building relationships with local landowners like the local colleges and other institutions as well as other large landowners to make sure they feel comfortable with us promoting their trail resources and that we have a good understanding and relationship with those folks so that we can continue to use those trails going forward and that it's a good relationship, a good benefit for everybody, and we certainly don't want to cause any trouble with local landowners, and we certainly won't put any trails on the map that local landowners don't want us to. So we're going to do that outreach as part of this grant if we're successful, and hoping that it's an idea that you folks make sense, and we can begin to prepare the application and return to you in probably 3 to 4 weeks with a more robust scope of work.
Would that trail map be something that's going to be publicly available through links and otherwise?
Our idea is to basically get on every single website that we could possibly get it onto, and really promote it heavily. We think, based on information we already have, there's a very large network, and we think there's a very receptive property owners out there. We've had meetings. Donald has attended at least one of them where we've got most of the large landowners around the table, and it was very impressive. They were all very supportive of opening these trails under appropriate circumstances to folks and making sure that everyone recognizes it as an important community resource. So we were very encouraged by that and hope that we can continue to build those relationships through this project.
The concern that I would have, other than I think it's a great idea, is that when you publish, a map, that you better make sure that everyone's on the same page, because if the world starts showing up at a landowner's front door and they're not receptive, that can undercut the entire effort.
Absolutely, and one of the things that we will do is develop a memorandum of understanding or some sort of way to memorialize the agreement that folks have had with the organization as far as putting out the map. And we won't, like I said, we will not promote any trail that a private or institutional landowner does not want us to promote. And certainly, if there are problems that develop, we'll move the trail from the map. Most of the institutions and property owners that have opened their trails up to the public have had little to no problems and have been very happy to do so. And so we're hoping to build on that relationship going forward.
Great. Sharon, would you have any questions for Dan?
No, I have nothing.
Okay.
I
Justin?
think it's a great idea.
I don't think so.
Just a couple things. This weekend, I happened to pick up a couple of hikers at Hannaford. They needed to get to the post office. And I asked them how they heard about the trail here in Bennington, and they said it was mostly through their friends. And, you've touched on something that, if we could key in with, other websites that, or trail sites, and I'm really not very familiar with any of it, but they had heard through the grapevine, through their friends, that Bennington was a cool place to be. So I encourage this.
Yeah. Thank you.
It's interesting. This is sort of a side. I won't take any time, but this is a time of year when the thru hikers and the like on the Appalachian Trail Network start to hit Bennington. They have for the last couple weeks, and it's important that the community welcomes that group, because it's an important economic benefit too, because that word travels through the trail network like wildfire. And it would be good if we gave some thought over the period of time ahead to see how we can be more gracious hosts to those folks.
I should note that they were very excited about the powwow this weekend. So,
Michael?
and if we could combine those events with
Can I just note
the
that
trail.
the Green Mountain Network does have a stop up at the trailhead.
Yeah.
And we pick up hikers all
Yeah.
the time and bring them into town and, get them where they need to go, so.
It's great. Michael?
No, long overdue. Love to see it happen.
Donald, you got anything?
Well, Dan, I think this is a great idea. You alluded to this group that's recently incorporated called the Bennington Area Trail System, and we're calling ourselves the BATS because it's a nice acronym. That's largely a mountain biking group, which is getting together, Tom, along the lines of what you were just talking about, to make sure that places that people ride are places that private landowners are comfortable having riders, and to work with ongoing agreements that would happen much the way that the vast Snowmobile Club has an ongoing agreement with landowners. So this kind of notion of a relationship with landowners that keeps going. It's not just a one-off, it keeps going.
Right.
And so we had kind of gotten together and we started thinking about this, and we were kind of scratching our heads about how we might pull together an area-wide map. And Dan and the Regional Commission, came up with, I think, a fantastic idea of getting this grant and really pulling together a lot of the resources that already exist, formalizing them and making them available online and by paper version, both to hotels and restaurants and also anyone that happens to be looking online at what we're doing. So I think it's great, and I really appreciate the fact that you saw the opportunity to go for the planning grant there. It's great.
Great. Thanks, Dan.
Thank you.
Good. Okay, let's move into the discussion relative to the 2015 town plan. I note that it suggests that it's a second public hearing, and as our practice has historically been, it's normally open for the public to comment during the first part of the hearing, and then the second one is more reserved to us. But in this context, because of the way we've arrived at this point, I think it's important that we have a discussion that would also invite the public to enter their respective comments. I would like to open this up with Dan sharing where we're at in the process and the timelines and what are the suggestions?
Okay. Thank you. As you folks probably are aware, every 5 years by statute, we're required to update, revise, et cetera, our town plan. And so we're at the end of our 5-year period, and the Planning Commission made the decision that they thought that an update was most appropriate at this point. So we've updated all the information, all the facts, figures. There has not been any substantive changes to any of the policies. So it's essentially the broad scope policies are unchanged. And the Planning Commission recognizes that there may be portions of the town plan that the select board or others may think should be revised, and we're happy to entertain those. What I would ask, my request is that if you find the update acceptable for an interim period of time, that you would adopt the update and then direct the Planning Commission to make whatever changes or investigate whatever changes or additions that you folks think would be appropriate. We would, whatever timeline you'd like us to work with, we could work within that timeline, get those changes, revisions back to you, and we could then adopt a revised town plan. The timeline for town plan revision usually will take, if you were to really pack it in and not schedule a bunch of extra meetings, would be about 90 days. So we can do it in a fairly short time frame if you folks think that you feel comfortable essentially readopting our existing town plan with updates, and then articulating or directing to the Planning Commission, hey, these are the 4 or 5 issues we really would like you guys to focus on. Take 30 days, 20 days, 60 days, whatever you guys think is appropriate. Come back to us and let's have a discussion about that. The Planning Commission would very much like to have a joint work session with you folks, if that's the direction you'd like to go, so that we could get some direction or some guidance about what changes or revisions you'd like us to focus on or do reports on. The deadline for readopting or for adopting this town plan to make sure that we don't have a gap would be October 9th, which is essentially the last meeting in September for this select board, because we don't meet before October 9th in October. The town plan will become effective immediately upon adoption. And like I said, we can discuss revisions at any time.
Could, before you leave, relative to update versus revision in the verbiage there, is it possible to continue the discussion even on an update passage until we have this joint meeting with the Planning Commission?
Absolutely. Here's what would have to happen. Yes, absolutely. We have up until October 9th, essentially, to adopt it. Unfortunately, if we wanted to make any substantive changes, we would have to rewarn 2 hearings. So we wouldn't be able to, if you guys wanted to make substantive changes, we wouldn't be able to adopt it in a timely fashion. But we could adopt it, and then you could make substantive changes, and we could adopt the revised plan. So that could work, certainly.
What's the risk if we don't adopt it within the timeline?
Well, we wouldn't be eligible for a lot of grant funds, including municipal planning grant. We would lose status at Act 250 and Section 48 applications, and we would lose our growth center and designated downtown designations, because those have to be addressed in an adopted town plan. And there are other grant programs where we would lose the certain bonus points that you get for having a town plan. So it's not catastrophic, but it certainly puts us at a disadvantage when it comes to a lot of funding sources.
Why don't I just go down? Sharon, could I ask Sharon if she has any comments, questions?
No, I don't have any
Justin?
questions.
I'm not at this point feeling comfortable adopting any town plan until there's some specific issues that I want to see addressed in it. I understand that we're under a little bit of a timeline. Quite frankly, we probably should have started this a month or 2 ago if we're on an October 9th time frame with things that need to, at least certain members of this board feel need to be addressed, going forward. Yeah, that's where I stand on it at the moment.
Okay.
I'm not comfortable with sectioning things out and passing anything forward until I see that we're going to have some of these concerns actually validated and looked at.
Jim?
I agree with Justin. I think this is too big an undertaking to go at it with any great alacrity. And I like the idea of having a separate session with the board to look at it with greater depth.
Michael?
Just a couple of questions and then a comment or two from me. If we did not approve this by October 9, and we would lose Act 250 and Act 48 status and growth center designation, once we complete the plan, are those automatically reinstated, or is there a cumbersome process to reinstate those?
It should automatically reinstated. We wouldn't be able to apply for the municipal planning
Yeah.
grant, but they would be reinstated,
Yeah.
yes.
I think we've had a couple, you and I have had a couple of talks about this. I think one of the things that I do see a lack of in the economic development part of this is an awareness of the arts and culture as economic drivers, number one. And I've been part of building a lot of plans, and most of the plans that I see are plans that you have deadlines, you have goals, you have performance measures in the plans, and I don't see a lot of those here. I guess that's, you folks have described it to me as kind of I guess a catch-all.
We didn't say that, that's what you said.
Oh, did I? Oh, okay. So tell me what you said then.
Well, I think,
Sorry.
Dan, you know town plans much better than I do, but I was on the planning commission for a while. I think one of the things about town plans is, A, they come by statute,
Yeah.
and B, you don't know who the users are. So when somebody's considering whether or not to move to Bennington, they might pick up the town plan and say, well, let me figure out what's going on in Bennington.
Yeah.
And as a result, you have to be a little bit careful about what you say. You can't
Sure.
say, our streets are terrible, and our police don't do a thing, and you just can't say stuff like that because you don't know who might be reading it as a document about town. I think it's one part aspiration, but it's also a planning document that is very comprehensive in its nature. So I think if we want something that's much more focused, we could ask the planning commission for that, and they've already come up with something which begins to get to that focus. But if we want an action list or a next steps list, I think there's a lot of material to pick from that town plan on. Dan, with the land trust, I work with a lot of town plans, and they all look roughly the same, all around the state. They're not all exactly the same, but they have a similar format, they have a similar tone. You'll never find any of them complaining about schools or roads or anything like that. It might be something that they should, but they don't.
I think you're, in a sense, I love you, but you're putting words into my mouth. I'm not complaining about anything in terms of what is in here. My observation is I'm very uneasy with plans plan to do things. They not only lay out large ideas and aspirations, but they plan to do things. They plan to accomplish X, Y, or Z by date X, and this is how they are going to measure that accomplishment or that performance. That's the one thing that makes me uneasy about this. And if all the plans in Vermont are pretty much the same way,
I think
I'm more uneasy.
if I could, Michael, I think what you're talking about is something that comes after the town plan.
Okay? Yeah.
This is more of a grand vision document. It's not a specific, very specific implementation document. I will say, though, if you look at the town plan, there are at least 7 to 8 documents that are much more specific, incorporated by reference, including the economic development plan, the energy plan, the park and open space plan, the housing report, the sidewalk inventory and plan. All those really do get into some nitty-gritty stuff, but that would make this document even longer and more tedious if we were to include all that information. So the other point I would make is we have an existing town plan now which is essentially the same from a policy standpoint, and I think it would be wrong to let our town plan expire given this situation we're in. You can certainly make it a very clear directive, and maybe we can over the next couple meetings, what are the things you want the Planning Commission to do, and that would be my suggestion.
And I appreciate that, not to flog a dead horse. As we talked about earlier today, the 2010 plan has certain goals in the back of it. I'm not sure when those goals were to have been reached or been approached. So I bet there is precedent for having goals and objectives in there, just no measures of accomplishment, with all due respect. Sorry, I'll shut up.
No, I'd just like to say that I like Mike's idea, and despite the fact that we are under somewhat of a timeframe pressure, I think it would be good in the future, in the not too distant future, to include goals, specific goals within each one of those frameworks, and put a date on accomplishing them. And then with the adoption of a new town plan, every 5 years we can say, look, we've done this.
I would say there are very specific goals throughout the town plan. What's missing perhaps is any kind of time frame. But the goals are, whether you agree with them or not, the goals are there, and there's a lot of them.
Well, and we could, as a board, we could go through that and say, look, this is next
Date
year,
certain.
this is
Yes.
1 to 5 years, this is
I'd
1
like
to 10
that.
years. And I'm not sure that we've ever really tried to do that. I think we've tended to look at all the goals as, yep, that's right, yep. They're all important goals.
I think we can and we should, and it's something that our chairman, after he became our chairman, said that we were going to get things done, and I think this is a way to demonstrate it.
Can I ask a question, Michael, quickly? You had mentioned something about the cultural and arts piece in there. Can you just delve into that a little bit further, what you were thinking?
When there is the section on economic development talks about manufacturing, other types of business, other types of activities that contribute to economic development, I think if I look at just this past weekend or two, the Bennington Arts and Crafts Weekend out
Camelot?
out at Camelot is a very good example of culture and arts and crafts being a significant economic driver, at least for a weekend, bringing a few thousand people in, spending money. The Brewfest, beer is part of culture. There were 600 people on County Street. Things like that. The Living Tattoos exhibition over at Bennington's museum, the Bennington Museum, this past weekend drew 120 people to the museum who in many cases never usually go to the museum, but they saw a cultural event that meant a lot to them. The powwow yesterday. These kinds of events are arts and cultural events that really prove that arts and culture are also an economic driver. They bring people to town. People come to town, spend money. Some of them maybe stay a day or two longer. Some come back. I didn't see a lot of that. You and I have talked about that, and I think I'd like to see more of that awareness present in the document. Is that?
Yeah, that does, and just based on what you say, I tend to agree with you. I just was trying to get a little bit more.
Gotcha. Yeah.
And to go one step further, Mike, with respect to what you said about cultural events, maybe as a part of that whole rubric, is to make it a goal so that each successive weekend there is a cultural event that performs as an economic driver for the town, as a grand vision or a grand goal.
These are, really good part of the discussion, but I'm wondering if we're straying a bit, because I think I got to get more granular, because if the changes, like the vision for Bennington's future, this esoteric hope and prayer and expectation, but not other than stated as a hope, there are provisions that I have difficulty with. For instance, if we adopt the plan, there is a provision that there is a good inventory of available industrial land and buildings in Bennington. Pressure to convert these sites to other commercial uses should be resisted. I think by agreeing to that, I think that discussion with the Planning Commission is going to be hollow. Is that not a...
It exists in the town plan now, so it's not a change. So, you're not really doing anything by re-adopting it, especially if you have caveats that says you're going to look at those sections. Yeah.
But doesn't it serve as in some form of delimiting the options for that?
Not at all. We could adopt this and 6 months later adopt something that didn't have a single word in common with what we adopted today or whenever we adopted.
But as a public document.
Are we being disingenuous with the public?
And I would agree with Tom, because the wording hasn't changed, but the conditions that created the wording 5 years ago have. That's an excellent point that you make there, because even though you could probably still say that on some level today. Conditions in inventory have significantly changed in the last 5 years. So if we do sign off on language like that, are we agreeing to it? And I would have to say that I don't agree with that. So, I think there's things that need to be, we just kind of had this put at us, and I appreciate all the work the Planning Commission does, Dan, and I appreciate all the work you do. We've had it given to us, and basically, the way I take it, you're saying, please sign off on it as is, and then if you have changes, let's make the changes after. I want to make the changes that need to be changed before I sign my name.
Actually, that's not what we asked. We submitted it back in June of this year, and the way it works is if you guys had changes, we could have made those before the public hearings, as we're required to give notice to the public of any changes before those public hearings. So, there may not have been enough time, but there was at least 2 months.
I guess we should have had a discussion
Yes,
on the board
I
level
agree.
before 2 weeks ago.
Usually what we do is we have a work session ahead of the public meetings, but it's been a busy summer.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Could, when's the next Planning Commission meeting?
We would be, well, I had scheduled it for Labor Day before I realized it was Labor Day.
Yeah.
But it could be any time.
Could we have a work session before that, like
Yeah,
within like in a week?
We could have it, not next week, but the week after, absolutely.
Is there anything like a conditional approval of the plan, and the condition being that the select board citizens can revisit that specific plan within the next 2 months rigorously?
Mike, and the answer to that is absolutely. Often, in fact, I think every time I've ever done this,
Okay.
what we've done when we were hitting up against that 5 years, we've just simply quickly readopted the old plan and then scrambled in the next few months to get a new one done. So it's very common that we just readopt the old one just because we ran out of time. And,
Can we have it so it conditionally sunsets if we don't?
certainly, absolutely. Could certainly say it's good for 6 months, a year, whatever you folks think, and then we would be up against a time frame where we would have to hit in order to have a town plan in place. Yeah,
I have some comfort in that, but fellow board.
I don't. I like the idea of having a little bit of a scramble to get this done and make sure we get it done. The longer when we do things like that, we push it out and we give an opportunity, to let it pass and to go on. I just always see things fade away. I'm not comfortable with that. I'm not comfortable with doing that this time.
What I'm hearing is that it's possible to make and adopt the plan, but have that plan sunset within 60 days or 90 days, unless we take action, at which time then we have no plan.
We've done that in the past.
Yeah.
The last 2 times that we've adopted, I think we've done that.
Because I don't want this discussion to continue
And then just,
on
and
the
just
bullets,
continued on.
the regular small points, it may be small, but and I'd like to have them resolved within the next 2 months. But I don't want to have to continually revisit the plan in its entirety, because I don't think that's going to be effective.
I think that, having a meeting as we've discussed, within the next week, gives
But I
us.
think when you go to that meeting, individually or collectively, we have to have a list of things that we want
Absolutely.
to look at. We can't just do it
Yes.
helter-skelter.
Okay.
Absolutely.
That's the week of the 24th.
Yes.
What's that meeting date that the Planning Commission has?
Well, they would normally be on the 17th, but I'm out of town, unfortunately,
Okay,
so we'd schedule
no
the
problem.
first meeting at 7th. But if it's likely, well, you guys meet we usually meet on Mondays, so you guys meet on Mondays. It
Yeah.
could, we could shoot for any other day. I can't speak for the Planning Commission when they're available, but certainly.
What we could do is formulate those questions on the 24th to bring to the meeting on the 26th. And then if we have to scramble, we scramble. If not, we deal with it. But I do want to move this thing along, and I understand the time constraints, and I think the board chair has to take some responsibility for not moving that through the pipeline faster. But since I'm now in the pipeline, I'm going to make sure that it moves with speed, and expect my colleagues to do the same. So that means some homework for us to bring to our discussion on the 24th.
I'm away that week,
Okay.
but that's okay.
Is that make sense to
Discuss it without me.
other members? Yes.
I mean, and the minor changes can be made, perhaps, for instance, the sentence that you read.
Right.
We wouldn't have to necessarily go back through the whole hearing process, but if we were going to make substantive policy changes, we'd have to at least have 2 more select board hearings. Yeah.
The time between hearings?
We have to give a, well, it says a 15-day notice, but that's typically 21 days with the banner, and then you can have another meeting within 24 hours of the first meeting.
Yeah.
It's really, but it's up to you folks. I mean,
Okay. I don't want to create a box for everyone that we can't get out of, but I do think we need the time to digest where we're at and make plans to move forward. And are there any citizens that would like to just comment tonight? Mike?
My name is Michael McDonough. I'm a member of the Planning Commission. I appreciate, understand, and I think hear that there is significant input which the Select Board wishes to have in our town plan. What I hear, I don't believe is something that can be accomplished in a month and a half. I hear talk about reformatting. I hear talk about adding complete sections, which have been discussed and which have been seeking input from outside groups. We don't have that input at this point. And I hear the need, the desire for substantive conversation about the vision and goals within our town plan. And I think that's all well and good. And I'm very happy and excited to have those kinds of conversations. I do believe it would be unprecedented and unnecessary to achieve the things that you have enumerated tonight to allow our town plan to lapse. I think it would change the image of Bennington as a forward-thinking community within the state to have allowed our town plan to lapse. It would affect the standing, as Dan has enumerated, of the town in the very important planning and development processes which have been in existence in the state of Vermont for as long as any of us can rightfully claim involvement. And I think it would send a message, the wrong message, to the entities within our community that work very hard to support and advance the goals that we have. For example, as Dan mentioned, the loss of our downtown designation and the loss of our growth center designation. And I think all of those would have a meaningful and an image impact on our community that I don't think, it's not necessary for us to allow that to happen to accomplish what you would like to have happen. And so I would urge that as we proceed to the meetings that have been discussed, we don't lose sight of the fact that the October deadline is an important one and that we can move on to the other issues that you wish to bring forward without having to take what I would consider to be a draconian step.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Can I go over there?
Why don't we just lower that mic for Mike?
You are going to do something about the handicap issue, it's pretty quick, all right? You are going to do something about that, aren't you?
We're working on it.
Well, I hope it comes in this town plan, okay? This is a bunch of garbage. They should have let you know what you needed to do in June to address this. I've been coming here since June to talk about this. It has been put off and put off. If the town plan has to lapse, so be it. The big issue here is Johnson Control, and you all know it. It's been over a quarter of a century vacant. I would like it changed to commercial so we can bring jobs, tax revenues to this community. That's what this whole issue is about. So you all want to kid yourselves, go kid it. You don't need to let the town plan lapse. Send them right now back and say, we want Johnson Control zoning change. Not only that, if I knew that this should have started in June, I would have looked through it and brought up some other things about our car dealerships. I know one car dealership might want to expand. They don't want to expand under the existing zoning. If a new car dealership comes in, what are they going to do? We are not an industrial-based majority jobs anymore in this community. And anybody in this town thinks we are, they're out of their mind. We have to go with the flow, and it's time to change Johnson Controls. And if you have to throw this whole town plan up and screw up Mike McDonough's little world, go do it. But we need to do something for the people of this town. If you brought that to a vote, I guarantee it would go 3-1 that Johnson Control needs to be changed. So if you all want to kid yourselves and play polite, go be it. But it's Johnson Controls. It's been over a quarter of a century, and it's got a smack letter. So if they want to get into all the pollution junk, ask Trish Capolino to come down and talk to you at one of the meetings. She's on the A&R. So you guys can all kid yourselves, and I would like something more comfortable for someone in a wheelchair next time, or I will sit at the end of that table, and you're going to have to remove me with a cough. Okay? Thank you very much for your time.
Okay, before you leave the microphone, just to respond to your concern, relative to zoning amendments, which I think is what you're seemingly addressing, that can be done at any point and any time. It doesn't have to be done as part of the town plan. If you have that particular interest, or a client or a friend or colleague has that, they can do that. They don't have to wait till town plan comes into existence.
No, they don't have to, but it's easier, and that was promised in the last town plan that they'd look at it in this town plan.
Really? Okay.
It's been 5 years. You know, so I know the history of it, and this is a bunch of BS. Change Johnson Controls, I'll be happy, the community will be happy, and they can have their town plan. It hasn't brought us any big prosperity now, this town plan. I don't see where it's going to bring us any in adopting the same one. But if that's what you guys are comfortable with, go do it.
Thank you. Chris, would you like to just introduce yourself again?
Chris Wright, Bennington. Are there any changes to the open space and park and open space plan?
The only change to the park and open space designation is we added in the Morgan Street Greenberg Headwaters Park wetlands onto the map. That's the only change.
Great. Anyone else like to comment?
I'm Sam Rustino again, speaking on town plan. From what I'm hearing tonight, town plan is about as popular as voting, town meeting day, or some other town event. I think what we need to do is this day forward, 5 years from now, we shall not get the select board or the town in this predicament again. There again, I hear people are leaving for vacation, we're crunching time schedules. Every 5 years it comes up. It should be known. And I think what we need to do is have citizens get more involved in the town plan. You mention town plan to any citizen in Bennington, they're going to say, what's that? I know for myself, I'm going to get more involved in the town plan. We all have busy lifestyles. I know that. But when it comes to the point where we have to make deadlines, and there's an old saying that I go by, haste makes waste. I am also for changing the vision view of Johnson Control, Globe Union, to commercial. It's about the only property that has the appropriate egresses to get some development up there and get our tax base back up again. It's worth a shot. I go through codes myself every 3 years. It's 2014 code book session comes out every 3 years, and there are people that are more organized in that situation, organizing a code book as opposed to more town plan. Dan, do you get citizens involved into town plan or meetings when you do have them or announce them? So people get how much citizens do you get involved outside of the downtown, the businesses and stuff? Do you get much involvement from citizens?
Go ahead if you'd like, Dan. You can.
We make an effort to involve the citizens, and at the last town plan, 2010 town plan, we did extensive surveying. This plan we didn't, because it was an update, but we do make an effort to involve the public.
No, between now and the next 5 years, I'm going to help you with that, trying to get people involved that shouldn't come up and speak. We do a lot of brainstorming, and it needs to be done because, like Mr. McDonough said, if we start losing our grants and our districts, we start losing our credibility in Bennington, and we need to grasp that and hang on to that. Thank you.
Okay, thank you.
Tom, can I just say,
Yeah,
we
please.
don't have to wait 5 years to have a town plan.
Right.
We don't have to wait 5 years to have aspirations. We can have them right now,
That's right.
and we can get started on them right now. The town plan is a formal document. We've got to do it every 5 years. There are lots of good reasons to do it. Let's do it. But let's not put off planning for another 5 years. Let's put off, let's not put off any of that stuff, but let's really decide what it is that we want to do, and let's involve the citizenry, and let's do it.
I agree. I mean, citizens should, and this is an opportunity, and you should have brought them in sooner.
I think the town plan has the wrong name. I think the town plan should be called Town List of Aspirations, and then we should have a document called the town
There you go,
plan,
Mary.
which is what we actually go by. Sorry.
I'm not sure if this is the time that this should be spoken to, but Dan did indicate that the energy was part of the town plan. Rick Carroll missed the thinking the meeting started at 6:30, and he did want to express if this is an appropriate time, something that we should all be very concerned and thinking about for Bennington's town plan. It is with the solar project up off of Harwood Hill, the 27 acres, and he's got a visual that I think...
Could we, maybe let's finish this and then Richard come up and we'll go right back to,
just so
we'll
that
go
we have
back.
the opportunity.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thanks, Mary. So the game plan is the 24th. Come with your ideas, but I think there's going to have to be some meeting, sharing of ideas with the Planning Commission on the 26th, and we have to move one way or the other to continue update, but at that point, I think we should treat that meeting, and it will be a public session, that we will potentially move out of that meeting to considering adoption or not adopting the town plan.
What time is the meeting on the 26th? 6 in the evening?
At 6 o'clock, I think, if that's normally, what time is the Planning Commission meet usually?
I mean, that's not, we normally meet at 5 and 6 is fine.
Okay. 5,
Assuming that I get a quorum, I'll see it.
okay, yeah. Let us know if that's not going to work, then we can adjust our schedule accordingly. Any other comments relative to the item on the agenda? Okay, having heard...
We need a motion to close the hearing.
Okay, thank you very much. Would you move for that?
I would
Thanks.
move for that.
Second?
Yeah.
Okay. All in favor of the closing that hearing? Aye?
Aye.
6 in favor.
On that issue.
Yeah, go
So
ahead.
now that you've had your second hearing,
Yes.
you guys have the opportunity to either adopt or not
Right.
at any select board meeting after this. So
Right.
just so you know.
Yeah, we know that. Yeah, that's what, I was trying to say that in the forward way. Thanks, Dave. Richard, if you'd like to come up, we'll go back to the discussion relative to the issue that you're raising.
My name is Rick Carroll from Bennington. I just have a couple of questions. I won't be long. This is the solar array that's going to happen up in Apple Hill. And my question is the town planning on signing the Rutland resolution, which would give the towns a little bit more strength as far as solar siting goes? Do you know about it?
Yeah, but we haven't even had that discussion yet. I know, go ahead, Stuart, you can tell us where we're not in that opportunity. And Rutland's adopted a resolution, which I think has a statute.
Rutland Town has adopted a resolution. It's not been placed on the agenda here for us at this time.
Yeah.
And what does the resolution basically say? I couldn't tell you exactly what it says, but it calls for greater oversight
By the town.
and greater opportunity for municipalities and interested parties to participate in the Public Service Board processes with regard to siting of energy-related projects.
Exactly. The town now has, you do have status now as far as intervening at this point, and what we're trying to do is at least get some trees put up to screen this from both the welcoming center and the rest of the town. So, I mean, that's something the town could get involved in at this point as far as intervening status goes. I mean, you have that now. The last legislative session gave the town that. So the town now could step in and do some serious negotiations with the solar people to try to get them to aesthetically make that look more pleasing.
If I might add something as well, at this point, you do have the right to intervene on behalf of the community, to ask the real hard questions about even our carbon emissions, what it does when you actually clear 27 acres of wild woodsland area. Do any of you know that answer?
No, we have.
Has anyone looked at it with the visual on this, from the Welcome Center, the monument, some of our greatest assets in this community will be looking directly on a 27-acre. In the original hearings that were held back probably a year ago, they also talked about looking to mitigate sound and wind from after clear cutting 27 acres. Are any of you aware of any studies that were done? Because these will have possibly negative effects, but there has not been a clear end line to what we're doing here. So I would respectfully ask the board to seriously look at this and possibly intervene, at least to get the answers before this is going forward.
Barry, what powers do we have now as a select board? Is the legislature enact some, I understand there was some legislation that passed in the last year.
What you can do as a board, you can intervene to the Public Service Board to say, we've got some concerns. For all of you who may not know the schedule on this project, they could be clear cutting that parcel as soon as the end of this month or sooner. I would think we would all want to have the information in hand before that is allowed. Now again, you will see that it is 27 acres in total. The company was smart enough to divide it, but let us not fool ourselves. It is 27 acres that will be clear cutted on probably one of the most visual pieces from your, as I said, Welcome Center monument, the country club, and other very wonderful vantage points in the town that I would want to be very aware of as a board.
I mean, I think as a board we've had little to no information, input, anything, really, from this project. So,
You have party status now.
Could hear you say that, but I think what we'd like to do is have our attorney give us a written opinion relative to our rights and options as a select board. And if a motion is in order, I would want to hear that motion discussed by the 24th. And then the board can act on that motion or not, depending upon its feelings about it. But because we appreciate you bringing that to our attention, because we have not obviously interviewed.
Just one more thing. I mean, section 248, to set a town plan without clearly understanding what that section is going to be kind of difficult, because the solar people and the solar developers, they trump town plans.
Yes.
So you could plan and plan, and the solar developers can come in and absolutely trump your plans. So it's imperative that you understand what that law is.
My question to both the town manager and or you, Mary and Rick, is, as you said, what kind of warning do they have to give us as a municipality, as a governing body, with the PSB, with respect to positioning these things?
Well, we received warnings on this probably more than a year ago.
Okay.
About the project itself. And they file all kinds of documents with the PSB, but they are not required to provide those documents necessarily to anyone who happens to stumble across it. You have to really assert yourself and assert your interest. At least you did. It was not just a simple fact, and I don't know what the changes in the law, other than requiring additional screening and things like that, that the legislature implemented this year to address some of these kinds of concerns. But I think Tom's suggestion that we get a legal opinion on what steps we must take, should we desire to take them, and I will do that. Good.
Rick, do you have party status?
The one concern I would have is the Public Service Board, I believe, is meeting in another week and a half, and I'm not sure if they will be granting that at that time, so I would...
Granting what, Mary?
Grant this project to go forward. And again, you've got other issues. There are supposed to, onto these complexes of solar siting, is that you are supposed to have 2 entries from different points, and at this point, this one has 1.
So it doesn't sound like they're going to have an immediate determination next week.
Well, the unfortunate part of the hearings that unfortunately none of you were at in the past year is that the solar company promised many different things, such as the wind, the noise studies, only to when the Public Service Board came to actually rewalk the property, they said, oh, what problems? We didn't ever hear any of those problems, and yet they heard it with probably 50 or 60 of the residents from Apple Hill there explaining their concerns. So all I'm saying, the sad part of this discussion is most all of us are in favor of solar, but if you were at any of the hearings in Montpelier this past year, or this past session, standing room only of people like-minded that want to look at our energy policy, do it right, also have it where it benefits our people in town. That's the other disingenuous part of this. Everyone goes, great for solar, and there's some great things going on with solar, but in some of these larger projects, our citizens are not getting the benefit of it. So I just ask, please, to do your due diligence.
Thank you.
It sounds like the question was asked, what can the board do at this point? And I'd be glad to get you that information.
Do you have party status, though, being a
butter? You do, I do, because I'm a butter.
Have you been to any of the meetings? Any of the public hearings?
I have been. It's brutal. So, that's why we're looking for support. I mean, at least what we could do is aesthetically make it look pleasing, because it's not right now. This shows you the feel, but what you don't see is the high tension lines coming in along Willow Road.
Well,
and I'll get you those pictures tomorrow.
Could we get somebody from the PSB to come and speak before us?
No, they're not. No.
They won't. So they have carte blanche. They can just say, like it or lump it.
No, it's a pending matter.
No matter what you do for a town plan, it's residential, commercial,
Yeah.
and that's it. So you can plan all you want. But the bottom line is if they want to put a solar array in there, pretty much they can. I've been working this for a solid year.
Well, what are our folks?
I've got $5,000 worth of trees, that's it.
Well, there's been the legislative activity and result, at least some screening and setbacks, which is...
Setbacks, right, but screening is still up in the air right now.
Sure.
I mean, the solar, they're telling me that that's just not something they look at. And it's something that we should all look at. I mean, this town is the only one we got.
Yep.
So,
Mary, what can you tell us that Montpelier could do with respect to limiting PSB?
We can't. The piece of legislation right now is for towns to actually look at what they're doing. You can intervene, and you can ask for these projects to be seriously looked at, and the benefits, the positive and the negative of these projects. And that is the only status anyone has right now. We as a legislature...
You have no oversight, is what you're saying.
No oversight.
Could you also, as part of that discussion, find out the timeline, if it's too late to seek party
I can do that.
status?
Because I believe the Public Service Board It's the 16th or 18th, I believe, is the hearing. There's two different projects down in the southern part they're looking at, and both have major concerns. And so if our town attorney can look at that prior to and have a decision, I don't know. I would think it would be in the town's best interest to seriously get those questions answered.
As soon as we get a opinion, even outside of the formal meeting, we'll make sure that Mary and Rick get those so that we can have a continued dialogue about it, make sure that that's done. Thank you very much. Yes. You're somewhat our resident expert.
Well, I try to be. Chris Wright, Bennington. A worst-case scenario with regards to this is what happened on Barney Road. That was a 6-acre piece of parcel that was clear-cut and really devastated of wildlife and vegetation, and now there's no solar going in there. So these are the things that can happen, and you should be concerned about what goes on with these projects. Things happen, and now we're left with an eyesore up there, and the wildlife have nowhere to go. Thank you.
Thank you.
Well, if I may clarify, the property was not clear-cut and filled for the solar project. The solar project had nothing to do with the activities that took place there. It was a place to move and store material from the rivers due to Tropical Storm Irene. The solar project came along after the fact.
One thing I could add to that, Stu Hurd and Dan Monks assured me that when that was done, that there would be topsoil and that land would be seeded. It's been how many years now, and there's no topsoil and no seed on that land.
Okay.
So things happen.
Okay, the end of that discussion for tonight. The manager's report.
I don't have any action items for you tonight, but I do have an announcement essentially to make. Today, the town of Bennington received a check for $20,000 from the South Shire Recreation Fund. The fund is closing itself down. This is a fund that has existed since the old YMCA went out of business. It has been managed by Tom Husser, Gordon Black, and Mark Kevorkian, and has made donations throughout the years to not only the town of Bennington, but other uses for recreation purposes. And this money is being donated to the town to be used exclusively for rec center activities and programming, and asking that we spend some part of the money on an annual basis to help maintain the tennis courts. You recall last year they donated $25,000 to resurface the courts, and they're now in very good shape, and those are the only caveats, and the money is now been turned over to the town. And we're going to establish a reserve fund that will be designated for recreation center uses.
Great, good, thank you. Board members, other business. Why don't I start with Donald?
I'm going to pass, thank you.
Okay.
I just want to go back to this, the arts and culture piece that we've seen over the past couple of weeks. The living tattoos at the museum, the big powwow, the Bennington Arts and Crafts Weekend, and the Brewfest. A lot of things happening here, and happening well. I also received an email from a citizen who may come in here the next time we have our session, who wanted to suggest that the select board think about finding a way to fund either a scholarship or a partial scholarship or two to young deserving students to go to CCV. That's all I know about it at this point. It comes from a citizen. I will ask that citizen to come in here next time and frankly to elaborate on that. As Stu knows and Dan knows, we had a balanced scorecard session today with Stu's management staff. We'll have another session of that on the 24th, the same hours from 10 to 12. And once that session is over, all of us will get together with Stu's managers and talk about what kind of measures we want to look at for the future.
What kind of timeline do you think on that, Michael? For the actual getting it up and...
Trying to crank it into your timeline, we'll see. Yeah. Sometime in September, I would say. Yeah.
Okay.
September.
without being too optimistic.
September's up. Got a lot happening in September.
Yeah.
Stu, the BBC, what we level funded, but that issue that sort of sits there about the rent and other, is there a way that we can ameliorate pass that rental increase back to the BBC rather than charge them?
I mean, if you don't want to charge them rent for the space they're using, just tell me you don't want to charge them rent.
But that was an increase of about $100 that we passed on, then we level funded them when they're...
Yeah, it was increased for both them and the BCIC. I mean, building maintenance is building maintenance, and, you know, I think we're only charging them $350 a month. I mean, far below normal rents for the downtown. But if you want to roll back the increase, we can roll back the increase.
Well, what are my colleagues' thoughts on that?
Well, when John Shanahan told us that they hadn't had a budget increase in 11 years, and he himself has not had an increase in pay in 8 years, and through whoever's fault it is, I don't think it would be a terrible thing to do not to forgive some of that rent in light of what they've sacrificed and without any contention with the town.
Justin?
I mean, it just seems so nominal. I don't really see it having a big effect one way or another. I think one of the issues with the BBC is it's kind of stuck in a gray zone in the middle. It's really got to go one way or another, where you come up with a way to do it without having any cost at all, which is probably not realistic, or you fund it properly and have something done. I just, one employee that has to cover administrative costs and go out and handle the mission of an organization probably isn't really realistic for any organization. Is a half employee going to change that and make it great? Probably. That's probably not going to make it great either. I think we need to have a bigger discussion about where that money goes and how we do it, and whether or not it needs to go away or it needs to be expanded.
And that's a budget discussion.
Yeah, and that's a budget discussion. I just think it sits in a middle zone right now where it can't be anything but really mediocre based upon what type of money it has coming in. And I don't mean that as a knock to anybody. It's just realistically.
Okay. Sharon, do you feel the same?
I wouldn't have a problem forgiving the rent. I think, we did have the other increase with the tower, so one will kind of offset the other.
I think the nicest space in the BBC is effectively a downtown welcome center. And I think that our downtown gets quite a lot from having that brochure rack and also that sort of fireplace, rocking chair area, which the BBC doesn't really get a lot of benefit from. They just maintain it so that there's a nice place for people to go downtown. And I guess I see that as a service to our downtown and our downtown merchants. And the space that BBC is in is a relatively small, kind of cramped office, and BCIC, same thing. There's a meeting room upstairs that they're very generous about sharing with community groups, and the farmers market meets there, and I think a number of other groups meet there. So in many senses, it's a shared community resource, and I feel that we should consider waiving the rent to the extent possible, because it's something that we all benefit from, in particular our downtown.
This is not, this is other business, so this is probably not appropriate for a motion, but I'd certainly, if there was a consideration to that, I would entertain it on the 24th, so that it would be a warned matter.
How would this group feel about at least taking on the rent increase for this, rolling back the rent increase, and then maybe having a further discussion at some point about what other services the BBC location provides for our downtown?
I'm sure the management is ready, willing, and waiting, whatever we decide to do.
Make a motion that we accept Donald's suggestion.
Second?
I'll second.
All in favor? All opposed? Abstentions? Okay. That's all I have to cause problems with. Jim?
Nothing this week.
Justin?
No, I have nothing, Tom, thanks.
Sharon?
No, I don't have anything. Thank you.
We do need to go into executive session. I understand that there are two matters, executive session material, real estate, and contract, and we have to discuss something that the premature general public knowledge would place the town and/or the person involved at a substantial disadvantage, and need a motion to move into executive session.
So moved.
Second.
We are in executive session. Voted yes. Thanks.